Well, hello there. We got a great episode this week. We are talking with my former thesis advisor, Kim Trevathan, who is a professor emeritus at Maryville College. I don't know why I'm saying this. I get into this in the intro, but yeah, he's my former thesis advisor in at college when I did my thesis, and I also took a couple classes from him, journalism and creative nonfiction, and was great. Loved him. He is definitely one of my favorite professors. I took at Maryville College. I went to Maryville College. There's a lot of great professors there, so shout out every professor I took there. But Kim was definitely up there, probably my favorite. Yeah, thesis advisor. He's a journalist as well. He's written a bunch of journalism. He's written a couple books. He's like a very open-minded, cerebral guy. And yeah, I just loved him as a professor and advisor. He was immeasurably helpful for my thesis, which we talk about a little. He introduced me to a lot of good stuff, like in the classes I took, and just was a great sounding board and advisor, and really helped guide the thesis, and honestly even point me in the direction of like what topic I should be doing, which, spoiler, was movies. So yeah, he just loves talking about writing and reading and art and books and movies. I've always found him to be very engaging, even above and beyond sort of what you would I think find as a professor. I don't really know. I mean, I went to two small liberal arts colleges. I think that was one of the things I'd heard about small liberal arts colleges, is that you get to have kind of a closer relationship with the professors. And I definitely found that at both colleges, honestly. I ended up liking Maryville College a bit more than my other one for various reasons, but I really liked a lot of the professors at the first one. And, generally speaking, I think, just talking with people who are professors or who are in academia, it's like they're just like really engaged. Like they do that for a living for a reason, right? So they're just like really engaged on the topic, and I just love taking them. So we talked about, Kim's pick was All the Pretty Horses by Billy Bob Thornton, and mine was The Wild Bunch by Sam Peckinpah. So fascinating couple movies to pick. I'd never seen either movie. I hadn't read the book of All the Pretty Horses either, so definitely going to read the book after this. I actually bought 2 copies of the book, which I wanted to show you. Here you can see both my copies of it. So bought 2 copies of it because why not embarrass myself on the internet? Because I had met a gal that likes reading, and I was thinking, like, in prepping for this podcast, I was like, oh, we'll read it together. Like, that'll be nice. And spoiler alert, if you follow the pod or TikTok channel, you'll know no way that worked out. There's just no chance that was going to work out. Probably buying a book, I think, is like a death knell for a budding relationship. But I'll probably send this out to someone for a giveaway or something. One of these 2 nice copies. I'll probably send out this nice. I think which one? This one's kind of a nicer, I think, older one that I got. That's pretty neat. So be on the lookout for that. Maybe I'll do it in the comments of this video or something if I post this on TikTok. But yeah, this was a really fun episode. I definitely talked too much in this one, so apologies to Kim, honestly. Apologies to you, the viewer. I think I was really excited. I hadn't talked to Kim in a while, and I was really just excited to get my thoughts out. So definitely going to try and have Kim back. I think we end up talking about the next pairing we're probably going to do is Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid and The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. I haven't seen Butch Cassidy. He hasn't seen Liberty Valance, and as a former journalism professor, I think Man Who Shot Liberty Valance would be fascinating for that. But that'll come soon. So hopefully I'll get Kim back, and I'll shut up a bit more on the next time, and not be as anxious. So yeah, with that said, enjoy the pod, and hope you're having a good day wherever you are.
Throw some colors on the screen and paint me black and white. I want to see a thief in a gunfight, or a heroine wounded in love. You can keep her lighted by an old flame left to frame, so I can read the feeling on her face, half in shadow, and know I felt that too. In danger and in love, you've got the dreams I was dreaming of, and I've got 2 hours to pretend. So I watch a movie with a friend, time's running sideways, and and reality's gotta meet me halfway. So I'll meet it here again. Here's the Trading Movies Podcast with friends.
Hello, welcome to the Trade Movies Podcast. I'm joined today by Kim Trevathan, Professor Emeritus of Maryville College and author of Against the Current, Paddling Upstream on the Tennessee River, and Liminal Zones, Where Lakes End and Rivers Begin. And he was also my personal thesis advisor when I was in college and did a award-winning, I should say, thesis on the Coen brothers. So Kim had a lot to do with that. I want to say you might have encouraged me to pick the topic. I think I had a different topic early, but then I think you said, you know, I want to say we had a conversation in your office about you know, maybe you should do something on that. And I was like, oh, I didn't even know that was I think I was doing something on like fantasy books, and I like fantasy books, and like I've read a couple. And I had taken Dr. Phillips's class on science fiction fantasy. Shout out Will Phillips, Will Phil. But then I think you had suggested like maybe you should, you know, do something with the Coens or movies. I can't remember how we talked about it, but
yeah. I'll take credit for it if you want me to. Yeah, I'll probably steered you away from fantasy, which is a big gap for me.
Hey, me too. Honestly, I think I've. It's one of those weird things. I've been thinking about, you know, I get a lot of comments on my channel about movies and like, you know, if I haven't seen something. I've never read Lord of the Rings. Like I've read The Hobbit, but I've never actually sat down and read the book. So, you know, I've read like Harry Potter. I loved Game of Thrones as a kid. Like I think that I started reading that in high school, but yeah, Lord of the Rings and probably a lot of the other big ones. If I didn't read it in Dr. Phillips's class, I didn't, even though like I do like the genre. I don't read enough in general though. So
yeah, work on that.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I you know what? I'm actually, maybe I'll get up and, all right, we'll start with a book review actually, because I got a bunch of books when I went to go pick up. So today we're going to be talking about, I'm still terrible at intros. We're going to be talking about, Kim picked All the Pretty Horses, directed by Billy Bob Thornton, based on the Cormac McCarthy book. And I picked, The Wild Bunch by Sam Peckinpah from 1969. Because I thought like, you know, Western, and I was just trying to think of what to pair. Like I had the only Cormac book, again, I'm ashamed to say I've read last year, which is now one of my very favorite books, was Child of God, which takes place in East Tennessee, and specifically literally right where I used to live in Wallen, Tennessee, which is like kind of on the border of Sevier County and Blount County. Have you read Child of God?
I have, yes. That's one to start with for sure.
Yeah,
I think that was one with necrophilia in it.
Oh yeah, necrophilia. Yeah, I can't. The description was very funny. I didn't, you know, generally with movies or books, I try and read like you know, generally little about it because I like to be surprised. And necrophilia and assault and living in caves, and it's really good. I haven't seen the movie adaptation, but sorry, go ahead.
James Franco made
Yeah, I saw that. I'm gonna go get.
It's pretty hard to watch.
Yeah,
I mean, I applaud that, but it's hard to watch. You're back.
Okay. We can talk about that. Yeah, for the Coens today, I wore my Fargo shirt, and I wore my, it's kind of hard to see, but my No Country for Old Men hat, which were two of the books.
Yeah, I'm surprised you hadn't read No Country for Old Men, which is a great book too.
I honestly don't read enough. I'm trying to rectify that. So over the last 3 years, I've probably averaged, like, I didn't watch movies for a while because I kept waiting on like the perfect time to watch them, you know? Like I was like, oh, I can't watch this because I'm not in the right mood or whatever. But at a certain point, I just started like, man, I really miss watching them. So I just started watching a movie basically every night, like maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And since then, I've probably watched like 1,000 movies in 3 years. But I need to find more time for reading, because I think I'm currently slowly working my way through the Gangs of New York, the Herbert Asbury nonfiction. Have you ever read that one? That's a crazy book.
That's one I haven't read, but I have seen the movie.
Yeah, I will say the movie, like, you know, I'm a big Scorsese fan, but the book is like way more lurid, and like he's like kind of like I don't want to say he's kind of like a bad journalist, but he's kind of like a bad journalist. Like some of the stuff he says in the book, because I think it's from 1929. He's like from 1929 writing about the 1850s. It just can't be true. Like the stuff he talks about, but like some of the story, there's enough truth there to like kind of give you a flavor of it. And
Mhm.
the movie is like way undersells, like the book is not even really about
Wow.
that thing. It's just like, yeah, there's like a there. God, what I keep sending passages to my buddy, because they're just kind of fascinating to read. But there's like one where he talks about like these underground, like the condition, like there's like an underground sort of like bare knuckle like fighting league or whatever in like 1870s New York. But he says like it's the filthiest and like most disgusting like place you could get to, like or could be in, because like it's bloody and it's violent and it's dirty, and because there's just nonstop riots going on the surface level of New York City between the cops and the people in the Five Points and the tenements, that you have to crawl through the sewers to get there. So everyone's just covered in like New York's 1870 New York City sewer, all kinds of, and so they're just crawling through there just to be able to get to these fights and gamble on them. And then there's these like really violent, bloody affairs. There's a guy called like the Leech, whose job it is to like suck the blood out of the wounds of like the combatants, and it's like he just paints such a colorful, awful picture. But I'm trying to rectify that. So yeah, I got different copy of All the Pretty Horses. These are all from Southland, so shout out Southland Books. We'll put these over here. I got the
National Book Award.
Yeah, Walker Percy. She recommended this, Lisa over at Southland. I haven't read The Moviegoer, but it seems like, obviously based on the podcast.
People badger me about reading that novel all the time, and I haven't done it yet. So, it's on my list too.
We can do a book club. I got the Madison.
Or books in the movies.
Was it Madison Smart Bell? Waiting for this one. Just looked like it had a cool cover. It looked. I know nothing about it, but it did say. Sorry, go ahead.
He came to Maryville College.
Did he? That's cool.
You were there. Yeah.
That's really cool.
He's a character. He's very eccentric.
There's I watched the movie Youngblood Hawk, which is a very kind of lesser known Delmer Daves movie about a guy, an author from Kentucky going up to New York City and becoming a writer, I think. And so I saw this, and it's the slip on the back said something about perhaps it takes the fresh vision of a young Tennessean like Madison Smart Bell to render New York's druggy, seamy side to give the flavor of a meal taken Ukrainian restaurant. So I was like, oh, that's cool. As a Tennessean that's been up to New York.
Yeah, he's really good.
And I am embarrassed to admit that I've never read any James A. How do you say his name? This is another.
Agee.
Agee. Okay.
Agee.
He's supposed to be like one of the premier movie critics of like 20th century, right? And I don't think I've ever read any of his criticism, despite being a Knoxville guy. So
yeah,
unless I read it in college for like one of your classes or something, then
I don't. I know I've read some Agee, but not that much. He's pretty. He's very flowery.
Is he? I
no. But I don't know. His film criticism might be interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never read that.
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird, I'm a huge fan of David Foster Wallace, but it's another weird one where like I've never read any of his books. I just love his nonfiction stuff so much. He was always my guy, especially when I was in college about nonfiction.
Me too.
And then the story of seems like the story of the Springer mine disaster. It looked interesting. It's last man out. Trapped a mile below the Earth's surface with scant hope of rescue, 19 miners spent over a week without light, drink, or food. And this is the story of their suffering, courage, and their miraculous rescue. So,
well, he's got a stack of very uplifting books there.
Very
light reading.
Yeah, I kind of, I like it. I got to say, like, there's something like to Child of God that killed me. that book.
Well, it's funny when All the Pretty Horses came out, I was in the MFA program in Alabama in creative writing, and we were really snobbish. We were reading Cormac McCarthy, but we were going back to Blood Meridian, which is this really dense, elaborate prose, really excessive now. But we thought All the Pretty Horses was a sellout, because it was accessible but later on, I mean, this is part of a trilogy that he wrote. But later on, I mean, I saw the movie first, okay, because all my friends at the time, they said, that's a sellout. And All the Pretty Horses, McCarthy, you don't want to read that. So I watched the movie first, and I liked the movie. I thought it was really, really good story, and read the book later. Of course, the book's better, but I still think it's a pretty good movie. This time I watched it, I started seeing more of the flaws and more of the things that people talk about with it. But I still like it. I think it's a great cast and a lot of good things about it.
Yeah, it was an interesting watch. So I watched it last night. I did these both of them last night, just the way it sort of ended up. I watched The Wild Bunch, and then immediately after I watched All the Pretty Horses. And I did like it. I think I like this is a question I've been trying to ask, but like do you do like a 4-star rating system? Like how do you conceptualize ranking movies like this? Would you say it's like it's good, or is that too gauche like to say like, well, it's a 4-star, 3-star, 5-star?
Yeah, I could do that. I mean, for me, and I realize I'm not making this rating for everyone. It's just me.
Sure.
I would give it, I'd give it a 3.5
Okay.
out of 4, and not a great movie, but a really good one.
Yeah.
And I think Roger Ebert agrees with me, but nobody else that I found. But he writes a pretty good review.
The great Roger Ebert. I would say I would probably give it. That's a good question. So on my Letterboxd, are you on a Letterboxd at all? Might be.
No.
Do you know what Letterboxd is? This is always fascinating.
The format.
Yeah, well, yes. So it's a social media site. It's like
okay, no.
yeah. It's like a movie ranking and review system. So you basically just like log the movies you watch and you give them a rating of like 0 to 5 or whatever.
No.
And you have friends and connect and comment and whatever. So it's just basically like Goodreads, I think, is probably the closest thing if you know Goodreads.
Yeah.
So it's like that, but for movies. And so 3.5 on mine is like out of 5 is my ranking for like if you're into this kind of thing, I think you'll like it. I generally tend to like most things that I watch. I didn't realize that was a more common thing. Actually, John Waters, I think, has like famously said that like he generally tends to like there's like any movie will have 24 good frames, and if it has 24 good frames, it's a good movie. Or he said something like that. So I don't know if I go quite that far, but I think I'd probably give this a 3.5 out of 5, which is like if you're into this kind of thing, I think it's good. Maybe 3, like which is if you're really into this thing. But that's kind of the dividing line for me is like whether or not I'd recommend it.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a fascinating watch. I'm so curious to read I'm definitely going to read the book now. Because given my only exposure to this is like to Cormac really is like seeing No Country for Old Men tons of times, part of my thesis, and reading Child of God recently. I'd be curious how much the book differs from the movie tonally and some of the stuff that of the choices that they made, because some of it didn't seem very Cormacian, if I should say,
Like what?
Like, I'm trying to think of I took a whole couple pages of notes.
First of all, we should say that the final cut of the movie was
right
like an hour shorter than the Billy Bob Thornton director's cut, which is 2 hours and 42 minutes. And so Harvey Weinstein, of course, is the one who insisted on that final cut. So
right.
So the director's cut is a lot longer, and this you can't find it.
It's a real shame. I would have loved to see, because has he directed a lot of movies? Did he direct Sling Blade? I meant to look that up. Billy Bob.
I know he wrote the screenplay. I think he directed that. He's directed a few pretty good movies.
Yeah, I don't know if I've seen any of. I'm trying to think of the movies that I've seen. His. I'm just trying to take a look up on.
Yeah.
On Wikipedia.
Yeah, go ahead. I'll let you. You're faster than me.
So he did do Sling Blade, which is in All the Pretty Horses, in a movie called Daddy and Them, which I haven't seen.
Neither.
And Jane Mansfield's Car.
Yeah,
looks like
terrible.
a documentary. Is that a bad one?
Not very good. Not very good.
Is it like Crash? Have you seen Crash?
I have seen Crash. No, it's kind of a southern. It's set in the South, and it's kind of.
Oh, okay.
It's not a documentary either.
Crash was one, the Cronenberg Crash with the accents. One of my all-time favorites. That was one of the funniest movies I've ever seen in my life, I think. I think there's something like 20 sex scenes in 90 minutes in that movie. And if you haven't seen it, it's just all about people being impossibly turned on by car crashes. No, I was saying for the audience, I mean, sorry, more for the audience recommendation there on I think it's my favorite David Cronenberg movie. I know a lot of people like Videodrome and other stuff, but Yeah, that was a joyous watch.
Well,
Okay.
I think tonally, the book is like, it's dark. There's dark themes in it, and there's a lot of dark themes, or a lot of themes that the Wild Bunch have in common with all the Pretty Horses, the film.
For sure.
But there's also this kind of weird humor that comes out of McCarthy sometimes,
Yeah.
and you can see it in the movie version of No Country for Old Men as well.
Yeah.
But I'd say the first third of the movie to me is kind of it's a good road trip movie, and it's an adventure movie, and it's sort of comic with Blevins,
Yeah.
and then once they reach the ranch and they get hired, and the love interest starts, as soon as they get arrested, for me the whole tone changes in
Right.
the novel and in the book. And
Yeah.
I think what's weird to me is a lot of the criticism of the movie is that it's, number one, it's too slowly paced,
Mm.
and then number two, that it leaves out too much of the book. So I don't think you can have it both ways. It seems like those
Yeah.
seems contradictory criticism.
Yeah, I thought I actually probably the pacing was one of the stronger aspects of it to me. I kind of enjoyed the pacing.
Yeah.
The overall like the final note I wrote was that it feels like it should have gone like one of two directions. Like it should have gone. I honestly almost would have loved it if it would have gone full like Douglas Sirk melodrama. Like I don't know if you know like Written on the Wind and Magnificent Obsession, like all those over the top Rock Hudson, Jane Wyman melodramas. It was kind of doing that a little bit, but it was almost afraid to go there. Like
Yeah.
if it had just gone full like 50s elaborate like costumes, like with this, especially the plot line between like Penelope Cruz and Matt Damon, I thought they could have like, especially the end when it goes back to being brutal and it's the prison and it's like him in the like kidnapping the police captain. I thought that would have been even heightened by like if you had like done this sort of very melodramatic over the top thing, but prior to that, then that part would have actually I think probably hit a little bit harder for me. So I feel like it should have gone there, or it should have gone like honestly I was happy that the Wild Bunch connected with it, because I thought the other place I would have gone is like more Peckinpah, like more very sort of grimly brutal tonally, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And yeah, the book is not, to me at least, not melodramatic, and
Yeah,
I think the movie kind of moves maybe too far in that direction, and I think the cuts that were done to it, I think
yeah,
part of the reasoning from what I read was it was to emphasize the love story over the other elements in the story.
that makes a ton of sense. Yeah,
Yeah.
so
So
yeah, when
yeah.
the note I wrote, the first note I think I wrote about this was like, is this tonally right? Because like the line when and I can't remember the character's name, but the little guy who I really should have this up, but the kid that they pick up, Blevins, yeah. I think Blevins, there was a point in there where he's like they're having like film wise, like it says something like he's like, why should we take you along, or why do you like this? And Blevins says, because I'm an American. And then like it has like this sort of sweeping score, and it's like a very Hollywood comedy thing. And that was like, that doesn't seem totally like how Cormac does, because I mean my own exposure to his No Country, but like in No Country and Child of God, but reading Child of God really explained No Country. I was like, oh, he's just an East Tennessee guy. I was like, that's like Cormac is like any old East Tennessee guy that I've ever met. That when I used to work at like mom and pop's market and diner in rural Kingston, all these, they had the same sense of humor as like Cormac and Child of God, where like right down, I think my favorite parts of that book even are like someone will say something completely horrific to like a cop or something, and then he'll do that East Tennessee thing where like they'll like say like something really horrific, then the response will just be, well, and then they'll just it's just the end of the conversation. They'll just walk out like,
Well,
can't process that now.
I do love that line, but
Yeah.
the music does swell a little bit there, and I won't keep apologizing for the movie, but they did have a totally different soundtrack.
Yeah.
It was. They said they hired this guy, an unknown, who was playing a guitar that was electric guitar. I think first came into common usage in the late '40s when this movie is set, and so they
Yeah.
went to the trouble of hiring somebody who played one of those guitars that came out at that time. and the music is totally different.
That makes
Marty
yeah.
Stewart did the score.
It makes so much sense. Yeah, I think even on Wiki, there's like 3 different people listed as having as music by Marty Stewart, Kristen Wilkinson, and Larry Paxton. Which, yeah, that seems like that's always a bad sign when you have like 5 writers or when you have like multiple scores. It's like generally not a good sign for the movie. It totally makes sense that this was like kind of a Weinstein, like, because he tried to make it into like a traditional movie and like and he's like, Weinstein, obviously for all his faults, I'm not defending like just to say be careful here, but like he did like artistically to the movies they produce and like have a pretty good understanding of like, it was I think pretty contributive or whatever to like the late 90s, like 90s 2000s sense of movie making. So like, and I think I got balloons coming. The Mac does that if you like do different hand yeah. It was for whatever reason. But yeah, it did seem like he was trying to like do into movies. I'd be fascinated with the score because I'm thinking of like, so again, going back to the thesis part of it, my thesis was on like the Coen brothers in humor for the audience. Yeah. And like how they produce humor and like their philosophy or whatever. But one of the scenes I analyzed was the scene between Javier Bardem and the old guy in the gas station, and it's a very funny scene where he's like talking about the coin flip and everything. And my favorite line that became kind of a meme between me and my friends in high school was he talks about the cord. He's like, don't put it, like Javier Bardem says to the guy, don't put it in your pocket. And the guy says, what? He says, don't put it in your pocket. Where you want me to put it? And they don't pay attention to it all because there's like almost no music in the movie. And so I thought like that, I think, is where the tonally, like, at least between No Country and Child of God, for me, humor wise, I thought this movie, that's why I was curious if this was like, if the book's like that, because it just didn't seem, it didn't seem like the way, I guess, probably blame Weinstein. It didn't seem like that was tonally right for like, to do like, I guess to emphasize the humor as much. Like he's a lot more, it seems like he's a lot more sort of subtle and just kind of flat in his writing in the way he does it.
The humor that survives from the book into the movie, I think, is all in that first third where you get Rollins with the abrasive. He just can't stand the kid. He knows he's going to get him in trouble, and he's sarcastic with him, and he says some funny things even after the big storm, and he nearly drowns in the big storm.
Yeah, I think he was probably my favorite. I don't know what else that guy's done. But he was probably my favorite. Lucas, is it Lucas Black who played him?
Yeah, he was in Sling Blade.
Okay, I didn't know that.
He's been in a bunch of stuff that I didn't realize either.
He was in he was in Get Low. I need to see the movie Get Low with Robert Duvall and Bill Murray.
I think I've seen that.
That's 2000. I still haven't seen it. I should have. It's actually it's based on a story that took place in Kingston, in my hometown in Tennessee, where a guy like invited, he's a hermit who lives in the woods, and he held like a funeral for himself before he died. And I don't think the movie's supposed to be good, but it's like one of those kind of weird Kingston stories.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kingston seems like a normal place to me. I
mean, yeah, normal Kingston. For the viewers, it's been a long running joke, I think, between Kim and I. So I live from Kingston, Tennessee. It is right downriver from the Y-12, from Oak Ridge National Lab in the Y-12 National Security Complex, home of formerly the world's biggest steam plant. It's only about probably 20,000 people. But the amount of insane stuff that happens in Kingston is per capita probably 10 times as high. Than it's like a Fellini. I mean, it is like a Fellini. Every episode I've done a Fellini reference, but it's absolutely a Fellini movie. And that the guy holding his own funeral party, like before he died, is probably like the 38th weirdest thing that could happen in Kingston I could think of off the top of my head. Strange place.
Sounds like a great idea to me.
Yeah, honestly,
people said nice things about him, and I guess brought him presents. And
well, yeah, and honestly, even the Cormac, even the Cormac reference. I think that's one of the reasons when I say like Child of God was my favorite. I could only read like a few pages at a time, but every couple pages I was like, oh, this is just something that happened in Kingston. Like it opens up the Child of God opens up with the future necrophiliac cave dwelling violent
Mhm.
serial killing character. It opens up with him going to an auction and yelling at the local sheriff because the sheriff has repossessed his land and they're selling it at auction.
Right.
And there is a video I can point out or link to if you want to DM me if you ever want to see it of that same thing happening between these two fugitives in my hometown of Kingston. It's literally the same. There's a video you can watch of them yelling at a local sheriff auctioneer as they try not these two brothers, the Houston brothers, who have like this famously crazy case that deserves a documentary if anyone's out there who wants a documentary.
Yeah, it does.
But yeah, that's the Cormac thing to me, is that he's just an East Tennessee guy. Like he captures it in a way that I've never seen it. I've never seen it captured or talked about really, which is why I think the tone of, and I could see that in No Country for Old Men even, as well, even though that's Southwest story. There's still like the East Tennessee sensibilities.
To me, the book has so much authority about things like horses and
Mm.
and even the violence in it. You think, what, how the hell does he know this stuff? And
Yeah.
it's just the language, and there's a lot of Spanish in it, but a lot of very esoteric terms that cowboys use and that arise
Yeah.
from the landscape. Uh, and of course, I love movies with landscape as an important component. And this one, it's vital. You're going
Yeah.
from a land that's becoming corrupted, and sold off to what they conceive of as a wild place where they can still be, cowboys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of melodrama, maybe it was also on my mind. You know what the other thing it kind of reminded me of was Giant. If you've seen I did a review on my channel
I've
that
seen
a
it.
few. Yeah, it's great movie. Long movie, but like just sort of the changing dynamics of a land, and like I guess because it was around the same time period, also because that movie is intensely melodramatic with Rock Hudson and Liz Taylor and James
Yeah.
Dean.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Um, Also kind of similar. I mean,
But in a good way, right?
yeah, I loved it.
I mean,
Honestly, it kind of broke my. Normally, I don't like movies that long, like 3.5 hours. It's rare for me. I like a good 90 to 2 hour movie. But that one, you just kind of get to sit with it, and it is quite nice. I think like that would have been probably, if it was to go towards them, like when I said Douglas Sirk, maybe that movie's a better example of this, because like I guess the 3 hour cut, I'd be curious if it sort of leaned, maybe it does start to feel more like Giant, where like Giant at a certain point I think as a movie, once you hit like the hour 40 mark, it's like okay, where you just kind of settle in, and it's like I'm just going to be here for a while and just hang out with these characters. It is very literary, I think.
mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Well,
go
I
ahead.
thought there was an interesting link between Peckinpah's intent, I think, to expose the West as a very violent place and
Yeah,
anti-romanticized, the old westerns, and
yeah,
the body count was really high in there, and I thought that, that was, I mean, I thought the Wild Bunch was a good example of that sort of revisionist western,
yeah,
but at the same time, you're reading all the pretty horses, and you see that McCarthy's kind of going in the opposite direction. He's revisionist in that he's showing the violence, the knife fights. They happen. They're just so quick. They're
yeah,
not slow. It's like the opposite of the way Peckinpah portrays violence. They're quick and they're uneventful, and there's no big announcement of what's going to happen. No big
yeah,
preamble. And both of those knife fights happen. Knife fights happen that way in the book and in the movie. But one thing the movie misses is the guy that the Matt Damon character, John Grady Cole, gets in a knife fight with. He's got a big reputation as somebody that they've chosen.
mhm.
He's a badass, and he doesn't come off that way in the movie. To me, he comes
Mm.
off as just an innocent kid. I don't know. Anyway,
Yeah. No, that's a great point. I think the yeah, it's interesting. I remember one of my favorite parts that was kind of mind blowing for me watching No Country was when they kill off Josh Brolin's character off screen.
yeah,
Like oh, I've never, like I don't think I've ever seen, because he's the guy in the movie, like that's the protagonist, and then you realize like, oh, this isn't what that movie's like. This isn't
perfect.
what
Yeah,
it's such a, and I don't know if that happens in the book or not. I don't even know how you would kill someone off screen or if it's reported or whatnot, but
can't remember.
it's yeah, it's This is a fascinating choice.
I told you about watching No Country for Old Men in the theater in Knoxville, a matinee. There was like four other people there, and at the end of the movie, there was just silence, and everybody just sat there. And some guy goes, "Son of a bitch!" Like, he wanted him to go after the
Yeah,
villain and the big revenge
yeah.
fulfillment, but
That movie,
it's just a dream.
yeah, I loved it. That was I had to sneak into that movie because at least back in Tennessee, I was 17. So much of a can you imagine a bigger nerd? That's the like movies I snuck into. High
That's a
school,
good one.
going to see No Country for Old Men with my brother's ID. I think it came out when I was 17. The the point about the violence of it, I hadn't thought of that, but yeah, it is like Peckinpah. I think like he's kind of got a little bit of the like Paul Verhoeven type thing of Starship Troopers and Total Recall and RoboCop, and a little bit of like James Cameron in True Lies a little bit, where he both abhors the violence, but also he's almost so good at doing it. And there's also he like
Yeah.
abhors the violence, but also I think he's really into targeted violence, like the packet like Wild Bunch. I was hooting and hollering, just like politically, like when like it was probably I think it's his most Wild Bunch. I think is his most optimistic movie, like by far. Like I thought it was just a hat. Like this was a hero movie of like you and your boys find like it's like you and your group of friends finally realize like okay we have a target, and like it's like such a joyous death for them at the end.
Yeah,
And
everybody laughs at the end.
everybody's because they finally it's like oh this is what life's about. And yeah, like when he sees like the German guy, like when he's like scanning of people to kill, and he's like, oh, that's the guy. I was like, please shoot him. And it's rare
Yeah.
that you get a thing of like that they actually do it, but then he just pops him, and I was like, that was it was one of the coolest moments I've seen in movies in a while.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and just
I like the
sorry, go ahead.
the Gatlinburg scene where the German guy goes, "You need to put that on a tripod," and they just start firing it with.
Yeah,
They can't. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's something with the trigger, but he can't let his hand off the trigger. It
yeah, the
destroys
mad
everything.
glee, and then he does it again. That was a note I wrote in the thing of the general.
It was funny.
It reminded me of I think about that with the movie Sallow, the Pasolini. I don't know if you've seen that one, the Pasolini movie. It's like a famously controversial movie that's basically like almost 2 hours of torture.
I've
For
seen
like
his other movies.
yeah, I haven't, yeah,
I've seen the
I think,
Canterbury Tales.
is that good? I haven't. I haven't watched it yet.
I mean, yeah, it's worth watching. It's yeah,
I have like all of his. I can't wait to watch. I think I've seen that, and I watched his in college. Like at my before I came to Maryville, I went to this other school, and I was a classics major, Puget Sound, and I did a paper on Medea. I think he did a. Did he do Medea? I can't remember. I think he did a Medea movie, like the Greek play, obviously not the Tyler Perry series, but he personally did not originate that character. But I think he did. Yeah, he did like a Canterbury Tales, and I think he did the Decameron, and I think he did an Arabian Nights, and I think he did
Cameron, yeah.
yeah.
Right.
So I have a bunch of his stuff. I can't wait to watch him because Sallow was a really hard watch, but it's like he got killed for it allegedly. So he got murdered after making it because it was such like he transposes I guess the Marquis de Sade like 120 Days of Sodom into 1940s fascist Italy, and it's like a critique of like the far right and the right wing in Italy, and
Okay.
I believe the right wing killed him for that, as well as because he was famously gay, like out in the 70s, and it's like it's sort of like it's 2 hours of just basically rich and powerful torturing like kids and torturing people. It's a very hard watch, but it's like burned into my head. I thought it was like a masterful, but like the glee that anytime there's like a rich or powerful or like fascist despotic person like the general and the Wild Bunch, it was sort of like the gleeful indulgence of like it almost doesn't even make sense from like a sociological point, but like it's not like his character in the movie, that general in the Wild Bunch, he's like you would think of like okay, does he want like land, does he want like money, does he want influence, does he want this, does he want that? It's like he like part like sure like power all that, but part of him just wants to like shoot, like be able to like just wild out and just shoot like a big gallon bung with glee and not care who he hits. And it's like I thought that was like the Peckinpah. I love his movies for those little moments where it's like there's a real hatred of that, like the hatred of like the rich and powerful in his in his
Yeah.
movies that come through.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
thought, speaking of children, children were really
Oh my
interesting,
goodness.
used
Yeah.
in the Peckinpah movie, and I guess it's telling that there's a kid finally kills William Holden character,
Yeah. What did
right?
you think about that? Like, what were the? Because I have a theory on that, but I'd be curious to hear your take
I,
on it because I was fascinated by that.
I'm still kind of puzzling over it. I mean, the opening in the opening scene with the scorpion and the ants, it's pretty disturbing, what the
Yeah.
kids are doing to this, and they light it on fire, and then they're always witnesses to things you don't want them to be seen, and they're not passive witnesses either. They're like applauding things that are going on. So I
Yeah.
think it's maybe a dark view of human nature,
Yeah.
starting from childhood on.
That's a yeah. I thought that for sure as well. I thought it's interesting. So his to me his movies like so my favorite director is this guy Takeshi Kitano. He's like become my favorite over the. I've seen like all of his movies, and he has like for me there's like a there's like a fascinating combination of like he's the most like depressed guy of all time. Like every one of his movies ends with him committing suicide basically. Like it's like probably 15 out of 25 of his movies ends with him shooting himself in some way. But they're also like very romantic. There's like as depressing and grim as they are, they're romantic. And his favorite movie is Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia, the Peckinpah movie, which is a great movie. Also, the same general is the main bad guy in that, and it's got a fantastic ending. But I thought for sure it's like he is making a comment about like human nature. I thought like that's for sure a comment on human nature about like yeah, kids are just going to grow up like it's cyclical. There's just going to be another generation of this. Like it's just going to keep going. Like and this is it's almost like they're viewing all this, so this is what they're going to grow up to do. But I also thought weirdly that it reminded me of the movie Philadelphia, the Tom Hanks, the Jonathan Demme, the
Yeah.
Tom Hanks, Denzel. Because that movie, I watched that on a plane last year, and I was sobbing by the. It was a bad plane movie because you're just gonna be crying in public about
Yeah.
Tom Hanks having AIDS and having to fight against discrimination. But writing wise, I thought that was totally fascinating. That there seemed to be like 15 points in that movie. Like every time they sort of brought up a comparison for what AIDS might be like, or how to convince someone who like doesn't have it or may not be like sympathetic to queer, like primarily queer people and who were getting it at that time, they said like, well, just imagine your kid. Like they kept bringing up children in the context of like as a way to like humanize it. And like constantly Tom Hanks is like surrounded by family. Like he has a very loving, like there's almost no drama in his relationship with Antonio Banderas. It's like a very loving relationship, and he has like he's very close to like his family loves him. And they constantly like whenever there's an analogy writing wise in that movie, they say like, well, imagine that your kid had this disease. And so it's like I feel like it has the effect on the viewer of just sort of humanizing it, like the horrificness of AIDS, especially at that point, and like sort of helping people imagine like, well, what if your kid had this type of thing? Like surely your kid should get care and shouldn't be discriminated against. And like no one I think would go that far and say like, well, a child shouldn't should be all this. But the Wild Bunch connection is I kind of curious to what extent he was trying to do that of like even as brutal and grim and as hopeless as like the main guys are. It's a very romantic movie friendship wise because it's like them finding a little bit of joy in the midst of all this violence and all this dark and all this everything else. So yeah, do you I mean do you think that's go ahead?
I thought about go ahead. Yeah.
Oh no, I was just going to ask you your thoughts on that.
I was reminded of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid
Mm.
at a certain point in the movie, and it was when they were being followed by the other guys, and they look in the it's not binoculars, it's like
a scope.
Yeah, scope. I can't remember. I can't think of the name of it. And they go, yeah, they're going out. they're messing with us. They're bluffing, acting like they don't know where we are, and blah blah blah. And there's a scene in Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid that's really similar to that. But then I started thinking overall, the movie is kind of like it's a buddy movie. It's
Mm.
hyper masculine sort of film, similar to Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Have you seen?
I
Have
have
you
not
seen
seen
that?
Butch Cassidy. That's another blind spot. Yeah, but
Okay, so it's a gang. They're robbing trains. It's a little lighter in tone than
hmm
Peckinpah's, but they both came out at about the same time too.
yeah,
Anyway, yeah, I mean, I thought definitely a movie where you try to preserve loyalty is a big theme, and just teaming up together to try to preserve something that's on its way out,
yeah,
and doing that through courage and violence, being good at violence and that kind of thing is definitely a
yeah.
big theme.
It's because it's basically like, what if 5 or 6 of them got together and had a target? Is like kind of how I interpreted like the ending of like them finally doing this thing of like,
Oh yeah,
well, I'm gonna like the scene that was probably my favorite. It was I was writing it down, but even before it led into the thing, it just kept getting better and better for me because like I love the quiet parts in his movies in Peckinpah. Like everyone, like I mean, he is so good at action. Like the opening scene, how chaotic the violence is, and how indiscriminate and how awful and horrific. That's like one of the best shootouts I've ever seen, and it's just grotesque. But then my favorite scene in the movie was when they're like, honestly, the whole ending sequence. But as it's the quiet moment where William Holden is with and the other guys are with the women, and Holden just kind of realizes like, I can't leave this guy behind. Like, he's just like, he has that moment of like, I
mm-hmm.
can't, like, sorry, I can't, like his moral center. He like it's like a, you could put like any type of inspirational movie over like music over that because it's like, yeah, I'm not gonna let this guy just be there. And
All right,
so, but then when he goes in, it's like it's when he says it's time, and like I, it's such a visually he's so good because like the other guy he says it's time to go, and just by saying like he doesn't say like we need to go rescue this guy, I need to do this, like movie writing wise he just says like it's time to get out of here, and the other guys just immediately know what he's talking about, and then Borgnine's already out there just sitting waiting, and they don't even think they say anything, they just give him a nod like yep, it's time to
yeah.
time to
Borgnine
talk.
kind of. I mean, when I watched the scene where he leaves the guy there, you know, oh, I thought that was a huge failure. I mean, I don't think he had many choices, but
Yeah,
because you remember he saves Borgnine from falling between the train cars, right?
yeah,
Pulls him up.
oh
Uh,
yeah,
the
absolutely,
Mexican guy.
yeah,
Yeah, I thought the movie's incredibly cast, and William Holden and Robert Ryan give it that real gravitas, and then there's people like uh, Strother Martin, that
Struth
the guy
Martin,
with
yeah,
the sneering sort of tone. I mean, he's
LQ
awesome.
Jones, yeah.
Who?
Struther Martin and LQ Jones are the two they're
LQ
two
Jones.
big characters in Ballad of Cable Hogue. They play kind of the same type of duo. LQ Jones is the guy with the ponytail who's with
Okay.
Struther Martin. You've probably seen him in Casino, and
Hmm.
he's the guy who the like sort of the local Nevada. He's got the great voice that
Mm-hmm.
tries to talk De Niro into hiring his cousin again. It's like, I want to thank you for your time. So, he's got like the great,
Okay. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember
LQ,
that guy.
yeah, he's in that. He's Struther Martin, actually my favorite. He's been in a bunch of that stuff, but he's great in Slapshot. It's one of my
Hmm.
favorite movies. He plays like the owner of the hockey team with Paul Newman. Very funny role by him. But
Well, he's
yeah,
famous. He's famous for
fantastic
that
cast.
that scene in it's not HUD, but the prison movie with Paul Newman.
Oh, really?
Uh, yeah, he says, "What we have here is a failure in communication."
Oh, is
And
that
he's
the?
he's like the warden of the prison, and I think he's just beat the crap out of Paul Newman.
I didn't know about that. I always,
I can't.
yeah,
It's a
I've heard
famous
that
movie.
line you're
Can't
talking
think of
about.
the name
Yeah,
of it. But
I want to. The thing you said earlier about landscapes was interesting. That was one point of comparison between the two movies. I took a note to ask you about that because that was a note that I had took about. I thought the use of like I thought the so Wild Bunch for me was like it's an all timer.
mhm.
But I thought his use of the Western landscape. I think about the scene in the Fablemans. I don't know with the Spielberg. There's a famous story when when Spielberg met John Ford, the Western director John Ford, for like 5 minutes, and it's at the end of the movie The Fabelmans. And a young, like, I think 14-year-old Spielberg who wants to be a filmmaker managed to somehow meet him. And the only advice Ford gives him, like grumpy John Ford, director of The Searchers and all that for everyone out there, great director. Also one of the first guys to do revisionist westerns, The Searchers being one of them. The only advice he gave Spielberg was to look at paintings, and he said, when you know why they put the paintings at the top of the horizon versus the bottom of the horizon, or like when you know why painters choose to put the horizon at the top or the horizon at the bottom, then you have a pretty good chance to be a picture maker. That's like the only advice he gave Spielberg. It's nothing. Spielberg was like, how do you do? He was trying to know, how do you do this? How do you do that? But he's like, go look at art, and when you do that, then you might know how to make movies. And I thought that in Peckinpah, because I still am not sure I know totally. It's probably I don't know totally how to make movies, but Peckinpah's horizons were all at the top of the frame, and it's one of the most claustrophobic. It felt like the movie felt claustrophobic off the start. Whenever they're sort of riding in places, or when they have the argument, when they have like the silver rings, it's like the West is almost closed in on them in a much different way than I thought than All the Pretty Horses, where there was this generally more bigger expanse, I thought.
Panoramic shots.
Yeah.
The one I remember is when they're looking down at the valley where they're getting ready to, or where the guy owns the ranch, Roach's ranch.
Yeah.
And it's just this idyllic scene, well, this is in Mexico. It's, it's green and there's a river flowing through there.
Yeah.
And, so
yeah. Is that, I guess, like from the book's perspective, is it, you said is the book more like idyllic? That was the thing that also confused me with Cormac, is at least in the two things, like why, like one of the revisionism, like the revisionist Western, is why I picked Wild Bunch to pair with this, because it seemed like that was the thing, but All the Pretty Horses ended up being pretty idyllic. Is that how it is in the book? Like the landscapes and everything?
I don't think so. I think the idyllic nature is in the characters' heads mainly. They think they're getting away. They're, the John Grady Cole's family ranch is being sold off. His mom's selling the ranch, so he wants to go to a place where there's not as many fences. The ranches are huge, and so he has that in his mind. And of course, what he runs into is idyllic at first, but then with the love interest and the other things that happen to them, it really undercuts all that. And I think the best scene that I can think of in the movie and in the book that kind of undercuts that idyllic landscape is where they take Blevins off into sort of a gully. The kid that was accused, the kid he did kill a person, and they sold his horse, etc. They take him off into this gully, and you just see him limping out of there. You see him try to get away, and you see him limping in the distance, and then they cut away from it, and they just show our main characters sitting against a wall, and then you got to wait a little bit longer, and then you hear 2 gunshots, and you see their reaction. So it's almost panning away from the landscape, but the landscape is really bleak and dry, and what you would imagine.
Yeah.
So I think it's a combo of idyllic nature as seen through the main character's perception, and that sort of reality of the prison scenes and the execution of Blevins, which contribute to the bleakness of everything.
Yeah, I thought that's maybe we'll blame Weinstein for this, but I think the way they shot that, I think, was undercut that, because I think, again, to the No Country for Old Men comparison, like I went back and forth a little bit with that movie sometimes about, like, it's almost too movie-ish and entertaining in some forms, just because the Coen brothers are just phenomenal filmmakers, and they just know how to direct stuff so well. So, like, the whole chase scene in the hotel where he's like climbing out the window, it's like very thrilling, and like in this and that. But they do a great job, especially when they kill him off screen, of undercutting it. And like even when in that movie, Josh Brolin hops into that guy's truck, and you think like, oh god, okay, it's like this guy's gonna get away, and then the guy just immediately gets shot in the neck or whatever, and like
that's true.
He can't actually get away. But I thought the direction, I don't want to say direction, but because I don't want to blame Billy Bob Thornton, because obviously it wasn't his cut, but I'd be curious like if that was the original editing of that, because like of that scene with Blevins in the movie, because I did think like, yeah, they dragged him off, and it was like, it was, I don't know, like it was just too kind of sweep, again, melodramatic and sweeping and emotional. Like to your point, as I understand McCarthy, like as I would think McCarthy would do, yeah, the dichotomy or whatever of having this like very idyllic thing, but then he just gets shot in a gully in just some random ditch in a harsh environment. That would make such good like filmmaking, but instead there was it's, I think in the movie there's like music. I did like the gunshots, but I thought it was just still too. It was almost even romantically portrayed then, when I think it probably should have been bleakly portrayed. It seems like, I don't know. I'd be curious. Yeah, we really needs a director's cut. I wonder if it still exists.
Yeah,
You know?
well, that's a different decision for that scene for sure. It's not that we don't care about Blevins, but I think,
But if you're
I just,
highlighting the brutality, right? It's like you got to like,
yeah.
to.
Well, that's the way. I think that's the way. Part of the thing where McCarthy doesn't want to. I mean, he does in the book really break down the details of something like a knife fight, and you get every move and all the things that are happening, but it's also anti-melodramatic in that
Yeah.
there's no big build up, there's no music behind it, there's no the characters don't talk, they
Yeah.
don't have a big speech or anything. And to me, the Blevins scene is just builds on that further.
Yeah.
It happens off screen. There's an opportunity there to show it and to make it as horrific as it would be for us to be there. But the characters, they don't see it. And
Yeah.
part of it is that this guy has to, there's no capital punishment in Mexico. So it has to occur off scene. And, and, and in addition, he's trying to give the guy a chance one of the villagers a chance to enact revenge by killing Blevins. I
Yeah.
forgot if it's the son or the brother of
Yeah.
somebody that get Blevins killed.
But he
So
can't do it, right?
it's like a shameful act, and he can't do it, and
Yeah.
the sheriff or whatever has to do it.
Yeah. I could tell, someone asked me on my channel, because I've been doing like reviews. I've been doing a lot of overviews of like specific editing sequences, like what I think makes something good. And someone asked like how to tell a good director versus a bad director. And again, not criticizing Billy Bob Thornton, but good filmmaking versus bad filmmaking. I think like how they can sort of maximize the content in that scene. I could tell, not even if I didn't know this was Cormac, just by like the writing of that scene, of even including like that the villager was unable to do it. That suggests that like the base content here is really good. Like there's like, I wouldn't blame the writer at all for that. It's like the content, like having that extra little touch of like even the villager can't really do it, and they just didn't. Yeah, that scene was not as constructed as well as it should be. And I wish they would have gone, if they would have gone a bit more brutal. You know what I'm thinking? Again, Casino, the LQ Jones connection. The scene, have you seen Casino, Scorsese?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the scene when how Joe Pesci dies, when he's doing the narration. And I don't know if any other movie's ever done this, but he's doing the narration, and then he goes and he gets stabbed, and then it cuts to him, and it's this really brutal scene of, not romantic at all, of just him and his brother getting killed as he's crying, and like they're like beating his brother with a baseball bat.
Oh,
And
yeah.
then they bury him basically, I think half alive, and just you see like the dirt. Such good production design, but the dirt just goes over his face like as the guy's barely breathing, and then just sort of. But I think like that sort of, to your point, the snap brutal nature of it, because there was so much build up in the movie. Yeah, I would imagine, to your point about the knife fight as well, I think probably had almost too much build up, where now that if you making the point about like it should, if the violence is supposed to be like pretty sudden and almost out of like sudden and jolting, then this movie didn't really do. I think like it does a good job of that in the first night fight when I can't remember the fellow's name, but the buddy Rollins, yeah, when he gets stabbed, it's good. There's like just a very minor build up, but then like on the second one, it's like everyone does everyone like go to the sides of the thing in the book? Like, is that like
well, there's more in the book. There's a lot of background on the guy who's setting it all up. We learn about him and what he's what it's all for, and
gotcha.
there's only so much of that you could do in a movie. I
Yeah.
understand the sacrifices they made, but you lose characterization and you lose some context and some depth. I think when you go from a book like All the Pretty Horses to the movie,
Yeah.
I think that's part
What's
of the
what's the
problem.
best? So you've obviously read. I don't want to put it a guess. Have you ever cataloged it? How many books do you think you've read in your life? It's probably it's as a writing professor. I
I
can't
don't
imagine,
know.
right?
I don't know. There's a
Yeah.
lot of them I've read and forgotten about, probably.
Sure. Uh, is this what's your favorite adaptation? Like, is there one that has been a like this is how I picture the book from that gone from book to movie?
Oh, that's a tough one. You should have told me ahead of time you were going to
I'm
ask
sorry.
that. But no, it's okay. Uh,
Is there like an
huh.
example that you think of offhand where it's like, oh, this pretty much matches? Like, I'm trying to think. I actually think a lot of Game of Thrones, like the first season, I was kind of disappointed in like the first season because I didn't think they went as brutal. But then as they got into it, I thought there's certain things that they did that I was like, this is pretty, especially like the Hound storyline with Arya. If for out there, if you've seen the show, I thought they did a pretty good job of portraying, and that's kind of one I think of. But I'm trying to think if there's any. I don't
uh,
know.
the only one that comes to mind is a short story by William Gay. I hate to see that evening sun go down, and it's a small movie. It was actually produced by uh, uh, somebody in Knoxville,
Hmm.
uh, and they filmed it in Blount County.
Oh,
Uh,
cool.
yeah,
I'm gonna have to
and
make a
it's
note
got
of that.
Hal Holbrook in it,
Oh,
and
I
you
love
can
Hal
find it.
Holbrook.
But
What's it
it's
called
one of
again?
those. No, I hate to see that evening sun go down. So the
I hate to
movie's
see
just
that.
Evening Sun.
Okay, Evening Sun. I'll order that.
Oh,
Yeah, filmed in
I
Blount
think I've
County.
got
That's
that
cool.
right. Yeah, you can watch it. I think it's on YouTube as well. But so that one comes to mind, and I haven't read The Godfather, but I
Mm,
suspect the movies are probably better than the book.
I've heard that. Yeah,
So
I
I
think
always meant to read it and to see, but yeah, The Godfather 1 and 2. Uh,
there's definitely some. Um, I think like I haven't read the book as well, but I would think because I'm not really that big of a Stephen King fan. Um, I I just is not my thing.
yeah.
But The Shining, I know he famously hates The Shining, but that's one of my all-time favorite movies.
Oh
And
yeah.
yeah, so and I've seen it's weird for me. It almost he's one of those guys that I think it'd be weird for me to start reading because he's the movie adaptations I've seen of his, especially like I'm thinking of like Thinner. Like that's I don't want to judge him based on Thinner. I don't know if you ever seen that. It's a silly movie about a guy who gets cursed by like some woman and he's like a overweight guy. It has really bad makeup and he just starts losing weight and he goes from like 400 pounds down to like he just can't. It's like she curses him and says thinner, and so he just can't stop losing weight. And it's a very silly movie. But the fact that he's like he was in that one and involved with it and really likes it, but he hates The Shining proportionally, I think is like there's something. Yeah, I don't
I
know.
haven't read it. Haven't read it, but I've seen it.
The book or the movie, The
The book,
Shining.
yeah.
Yeah, I
The
haven't
the
either.
movie's great, yeah.
Yeah, the movie. I love the movie. Um, I'd be curious. Actually, I've been watching a lot of the movie I brought up at the beginning, the Youngblood Hawk by Delmer Daves. He famously adapted a ton of books, and there's a lot of like he adapted a lot of interesting like 20th century. I don't want to say like mass fiction, but I think like mass fiction. It's interesting to think about. I guess we don't really read anymore as a culture, generally, right? Like it's not.
Sadly.
Sadly, yeah, we are not, and I'm part of that. I'm not even gonna like you know, I, I to my great shame and embarrassment, I really wish I read more, especially fiction. Like even when I like the easiest things for me to read are like I read a lot of long form journalism. That's always been essay.
Okay, good. Yeah.
Yeah, that like well I'm not I'm not I do a lot of that and I like news and other stuff. So like I'm reading a lot of stuff, but I'm not reading like I guess when I
Books.
think of reading, yeah, I think of like fiction or extended nonfiction books. Um, but it's interesting to watch a lot of these older movies, and a lot of them were like the trailers even back in the day are like based on the best-selling book of 1945, and like they'll go from a book in 1945 that like, just in terms of the content that is being like generated for movies, like it's so weird to think about culturally the idea of a book, I think, being so popular. I honestly can't imagine it. I guess there's still some of that happens primarily with like, this isn't me saying it, but like quote unquote women's movies nowadays. Like I'm thinking of I can't remember the one that came out last year, the one with the controversy with Blake Lively. What was that? I know it was like a pretty big It Ends With Us, I think, based on, it was a 2016 novel, and I think it was a pretty popular novel. I haven't read it. Yeah. Experienced a resurgence in popularity through TikTok and top sales lists in 2023 and 2024.
Yeah.
And so then it became a movie that made $350 million. And I know it's interesting. I've been watching all these old movies about, so many of them, the trailers start with based on the book that you surely must have read. Like, I guess like, last year or whatever. But yeah, well, it's, go ahead. Sorry.
I think that, the obvious choice of a great adaptation is No Country for Old Men, and it made me think, well, wonder what the Coen brothers would have done with All the Pretty Horses,
Oh, yeah.
Decisions they would have made. Because I think Billy Bob Thornton makes some pretty good decisions in adapting that book. But I understand about the tone and some of the criticisms about how the pace is. It's almost too fast sometimes. Things happen so quickly, and there's so much that happens. It's hard to get it into less than 2 hour movie.
Yeah. Are the characters, the other thing that kind of took me out of it a little, because again, watching a lot of older stuff, is, are the characters supposed to be attractive in the movie? Like, is he supposed to be as hot as Matt Damon is? Like, and even like Blevins is like pretty good, like Lucas Black, pretty good looking guy, and the other guy's like Penelope Cruz, obviously a very attractive lady. Like everyone, like it's kind of a general complaint with mine that like you have you like generally most people are like super attractive in these things, and like that's where it kind of reminded me more of a Douglas Sirk melodrama, because like that is what would be in a Sirk melodrama. I mean, you'd had Rock Hudson, who's like the handsomest guy ever, and then Jane Wyman or Dorothy Malone. Like you'd have like these sort of beautiful people acting over the top. But compared to the Wild Bunch, where it's like Ernest Borgnine and William Holden's not a bad looking guy, but he's pretty old. He's he's pretty aged and withered, and they make him L.Q. Jones, Strother Martin. Like these are there's some interesting faces in that, let's say. But I guess in the book, like when you conceptualize the adaptation of the book, did they look more like, when you were reading the book, did it look more like the Wild Bunch cast, or more like the sort of modern Hollywood? I mean, A+ cast.
Yeah, I don't think it has a Hollywood feel when you read the book. The most prominent thing, I think, is their youth. The fact that they're 16, 17 years old, and they're taken off from Mexico.
Wow,
and,
they're that.
So, and Damon, I don't think Damon looks quite that young, but I think he does a fairly good job in the movie of that sort of callow.
Yeah, he looks about 10 years older to me than that.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
That almost suggests that maybe Lucas Black should have been the main character, Blevins.
Yeah, played Blevins. Played John Grady Cole.
Yeah. That's fascinating. I totally. So there's 16 or 17 in the book. Mm-hmm. That's crazy. Yeah. The two main guys read it like late 20s, probably, maybe 30 or something. But definitely like. I'm sorry.
You think the actors are that old?
I don't. Well, that's what they looked like to me, I guess. Like I don't know. Okay. Yeah, well, I think.
Yeah, that introduces a lot of problems.
Well, I mean, this was 2001, right? Or 2000?
2000, yeah.
So Damon was 30, and the other guy was 29.
Yeah, so they're supposed to be a lot. You're supposed to think they're a lot younger than that.
Gotcha.
In the book and the movie.
And Blevins was 18.
Well, he was supposed to be like 13.
Yeah.
They have to guess at his age. He says he's 16, I think.
He does look, I think the proportions are right? But it just seems shifted, like, 5-10 years younger or whatever. But yeah, that's a big difference, because that's like even then, like just in terms of like life stages, right? I'm thinking of like the experience of a 16, 17, 18-year-old like falling in love with like a, at that age versus like when you're 29 or whatever, like it's different, right? Like it's like just a different experience, or like just experiencing a strong attraction. So yeah,
Yeah,
that
and they're running away from home. They're running away from what everything they know into the unknown at that
yeah
age, and I think that raises the stakes a lot. And they're both really courageous, right? They're brave guys. As sometimes when you're 16 or 17, you think you're immoral,
yeah
uh, but at the same time, they take a big risk and just leaving everything that's familiar
yeah.
at
Do
that
you
age.
I was curious. So in the movie, I only got a little bit of it. But speaking of the Douglas Sirk connection and Rock Hudson, was the relationship between John Grady Cole and Rollins? Was it supposed to be homoerotic at all, or just homosocial, or like friendship? Like, is it? I guess is it that way in the book? Like, is there a suggestion of that? Because in the
I don't think
movie,
so. Mm-mm.
interesting.
I didn't get that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they have that commonality of coming from the same place,
Hmm.
and they have that banter, so they've known each other uh, for a long time, and they put up with each other. There is some bickering like you might see
Mm.
uh, between couples, but yeah, I didn't get that. Maybe.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. At least in the movie, I thought. Well, I maybe would have like had I if I ever get to remake this, no Weinstein, for many reasons. The I think I would maybe that the exploration of that is one of my favorite parts of a lot of Western movies in the 50s, like Red or 40s too. Red River is like the
Yeah.
very classic example of like probably the gayest movie ever made. But even Delmer Daves' Cowboy is kind of like it actually has a very similar plot to this, believe it or not, with Jack Lemmon and Glenn Ford. It's the other probably one of the gayest westerns. It's maybe number two. I mean, if from back then, it's a lesser known one, but Jack Lemmon falls in love with a same type of thing, like the daughter of like a big Mexican rancher, and he goes down there, and but it's like an economic thing where he's as well, where as well as this one. Actually, could have been a good that could have been a good pairing for this, because the dad also in Cowboy doesn't want her to marry him, and so he goes down there, and then the rest of the movie is actually an exploration of like the outlaw nature of being a trailhand in the Old West, and like how that leads to sort of interesting homosocial, homoerotic relationships between men. That's like, yeah, it's a fascinating exploration of that, because Glenn Ford's just trying to kind of convince him, like, this can be a fun lifestyle. Like, we can hang out, we can like raise cattle. It's lawless out here, but it's not like, it's an interesting depiction of like, I guess, homosexual relationships, because they would never call themselves gay, right? It's just like, that's not even, but it's like, whatever the thing is, they're trying to convince, like Glenn Ford is trying to convince Jack Lemmon that like, it's cool to be kind of a gay like trailhand with a bunch of other dudes, and you don't have to deal with any of this, and like you can just be outlaws. And movie ends with them side by side taking a bath together in these two separate tubs, just shooting off their guns in this hotel room. And it's like, it's got a lot of themes in there. So I was curious about that in the book, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, there's a point where Rollins is saying, you're going to get in trouble, dealing with this girl, and her dad
Yeah.
doesn't like this, and it's going to, there's a lot of that sort of foreboding, but
Mm-hmm.
there's not a sense, I don't think, of jealousy or, of somebody. It's more of something that he sees as inevitable. He's infatuated and he just can't control it,
Yeah.
and his buddy is against it, but not in a way that makes you think that something's going on between them. But I think in terms of living that lifestyle, the film is idyllic in that, being out and camping out,
Yeah.
and no women around. You build a fire, and it's simple, and
Yeah.
I think that is there in the first part of the movie. You've seen
Absolutely.
Brokeback Mountain, though, right?
I haven't. That's to my
Okay.
to my great shame. Yeah, to my great shame, I need to.
That's a really good adaptation, I think, too.
Really, I didn't even know it was a book.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Annie Proulx, yeah.
I have no idea.
Proulx, yeah.
Yeah, I love
anyway.
Ang Lee as a director, and obviously Heath Ledger and Gyllenhaal. Right? It's they're both great actors. So it's just one of those things that I haven't gotten around to. But definitely want to. I might do an episode. That'd be a good episode. Maybe with someone. I'll watch like Red River
Yeah,
and Brokeback
that would
Mountain
be
would
good.
be. Yeah, I love Red River. I just recently Howard Hawks,
Mm-hmm.
Monty Clift, John Wayne.
Yeah.
Great movie. The yeah, that's was it fascinating. You know who I liked in this movie? That I was kind of upset he wasn't in it more was Robert Patrick. He has like one scene in here. The Terminator 2 guy, if you're not familiar out there, the
I knew,
T-1000.
yeah, I knew he looked familiar, but I couldn't place him, so he's in
Yeah,
Terminator.
yeah. He's the T-1000. He's also Doggett on the X-Files. He's like the David Duchovny
Okay.
replacement that they get. He has a great bit role on the Sopranos, but he's got like that really intense really intense eyes, I guess.
Yeah, and in the book, the movie ends with, which kind of supports your thesis about homoeroticism. The movie ends when uh, uh, John Grady Cole returns the horse of his buddy Rawlins, and it ends
Really?
right there. And in the book, there's, John Grady Cole goes to his father's funeral, and he decides that he's going to leave again. I mean, he's going to be basically a
Oh, no
nomad
kidding.
out west. Yeah,
That's such a
and
change.
it's kind of a lyrical ending in terms of what he's going to do and what he plans on doing anyway.
That's like a total change.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Big time.
crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm really gonna have to read the book because that's
Yeah.
crazy. That
I liked
totally
it. I liked it a lot less this time around too.
yeah.
Uh,
It makes so much sense that you just like keep going. It doesn't make sense for the character to like as like a journey now back home, and I'm just gonna live here, right? It's like
and I wonder if they did
yeah.
cut the the original ending. It makes me wonder if that was cut.
Yeah.
Different ending.
Damn.
But I don't know. We'll never know.
Have to readapt it. It was interesting. So this was his first popular book, right? Like, was this the one that Oprah had selected as her like? There's like I'm trying to remember like in his career as a writer, Cormac. Like, was it the one? And there's those balloons again because I did.
She picked The Road,
She picked The Road.
the apocalyptic one, father son type.
Was this his first popular, like his first successful book for whatever reason?
I think yeah, it won a National Book Award. Yeah,
Okay.
I think it's the first one where he really sold a lot. I could
Yeah.
be wrong, but I think so. And this started the trilogy. There's a whole Mexican trilogy that all three of them are really good. Cities of the Plain and the second one's escaping me right now.
Are these your favorite of his books?
Border. Yes.
Interesting. These so
For
you've
sure.
I'm sure you've probably read his. So it's not. I would have guessed. I was curious. I was gonna guess. What would it be? I haven't read it yet, but Suttree, because like you wrote 2 books. So for the audience,
Yeah.
Kim has written books about waterways, right? And like liminal zones and waterways, rivers, and I believe Suttree is when he was living. Actually, right at this moment, I'm probably about 3 or 4 miles away from his house in Louisville because he lived in. He lived in foot like where I used to live. I guess closer in Sevier County, border Blount County. I probably lived 5 miles away from him then. But then, as the crow flies, in Louisville, Tennessee, please don't stalk and kill me if you're out there. He like probably 3 miles away down. I can't remember. It's like something like maybe it's like Dogwood or some type of road. But yeah, he lived right on the Tennessee River. Louisville is probably I'm probably a couple miles from maybe a mile from the Tennessee River by as a crow flies. And
He lived close to Martinville Pike is the road, I think, in Blount County. He's got a couple of places I think he lived there. But I love Suttree. Yeah, it's a great novel. I just think he's a little bit better writer by the time of the trilogy. He's less prone to some of those excess verbiage and digressions, I guess. But yeah, Suttree's great.
A little more edited.
Maybe. Here's my dog. My dog Maggie's joining us now.
Howdy, Maggie. Welcome to the podcast.
You saw her tail there for a second.
Is this like? Would you say this is one? I was curious about the tone of it. When the tone was a little like off compared to the other. I don't want to say like, not objectively off, but like off compared to. It didn't seem very Cormacian according to the stuff I've read, like or watched, like. But one of the thing I wrote a note, like, is this supposed to be one of his most is this his most accessible quote unquote book? Like, is it was the first one to get.
Yeah, at the time, like I said, all my buddies down in the MFA program, we were saying, "Oh, it's a sellout," because it's less difficult than the books we were reading, like Blood Meridian.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's got a plot and characters that I think you could more easily identify with in some of the characters in the darker McCarthy work.
Yeah.
Earlier work.
Another one I wrote down as far as a note in terms of comparing the two. I was surprised how, like how much they connected with the, like, sort of the themes of, like, I honestly didn't know, like, Wild Bunch, because I didn't look up anything about. I just knew it took place near the border, but they both have sort of the crux of it is, like, a friend is like one of your buddies is like someone is like captured or arrested or kidnapped or like whatever by this other force, and then you kind of almost get to see the two sides of that, right? Like Damon, I feel like, is going to live with a lifetime of regret for not saving Blevins. Damon and Rollins, Matt Damon and Rollins and his buddy both, but in the I thought weirdly, despite the Wild Bunch, despite its reputation, was a lot more optimistic, because it's like, well, they don't have to live with the regret because they just went out and did it, right? Like they just went out and got their buddy back, and they died doing it, but he died doing it, but yeah,
a lot more action, a lot less talk, and musing about things in the Wild Bunch. And I was thinking my favorite scene in there is the bridge scene.
Oh
where,
yeah,
there's so much tension built up, and he lights a fuse to blow up the bridge right when they're trying to get across it, right when his cohorts are trying to get across it with a wagon load of guns. And I remember saying to myself, "Don't light the fuse before he gets over." But he was he was right to light it. It was perfect timing, of course. But that suspense in that scene was really good.
Now I really maybe if we do this again, maybe so the other movie I was thinking about picking, just because it's a really good movie, and Kim, I don't think you'd seen it, was Sorcerer, and I thought that was also.
I started to watch that. It looks really good.
Yeah, if you like bridge scenes and tension in bridge scenes, that's the king. That's the king, the absolute king of them. There is I couldn't believe. I was kind of curious. Like I surely there's no way they would allow that bridge scene in the Wild Bunch to be filmed today, right? Because it's like this. I was like the stunt on that of just like all the horses falling in with the dudes. Yeah. How did they film that? Like
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Oh, I do have to say that that the whole notion of horses and the sort of mysticism that surrounds them and all the pretty horses, I do like. And I thought that was pretty well done in the movie. And there's a lot more depth in the book about it. But I thought the horses were generally mistreated in the Wild Bunch.
Oh, right? Yeah. That's a great comparison. That's a great comparison.
Pretty abused and taken for granted, right?
Yeah, the horses, that is not a good movie to be a horse in the Wild in the Wild Bunch. Yeah. Jeez. It's like the train, like even the train scene when it just smashes into the other train and the horses. Yeah. I hope those horses were okay. I don't know if PETA sanctioned that movie, but yeah, that was probably my favorite shots in All the Pretty Horses was the opening ones, with at night with the very bright white light, the sort of artificial moonlight, on the horses as they kind of. I would have loved if it had gotten dreamier like that. Still, again, that seems a very Hollywood. I'm gonna blame Weinstein for that, because like just to drop that in at the beginning and then maybe one other time. As opposed to making it like a central theme of how the movie tells its story.
Yeah, you could make a case that that movie and that book is about horses. Of course, the title's a dead giveaway, but the scenes with Matt Damon or John Grady Cole breaking the horses, and his skill at that, I thought was pretty well done too.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wrote in my note. So you said you liked Matt Damon in this?
Yeah, I thought he was fine. I thought
I thought he was good. I'd be curious. The note I wrote was I would have loved to see Ernest Borgnine in that role. To be honest, I know he's supposed to be younger, but like I thought I'd be curious, like Damon, at least his on-screen persona at that time, like he was kind of typecast as like the Goodwill Hunting, like
Mm-hmm.
smarter than everybody, like hidden genius, kind of like up and comer type guy, but like that and Rounders, where he's like, secretly a poker genius or whatever. This is
Yeah.
very much the opposite. I don't get this. Like, I mean, I guess he kind of. Well, now that I say that, he kind of is, because he's like a secret horse genius, right? Like,
Yeah.
but he kind of brings like almost. He's almost too smart for it. I thought, where like almost too. One of the things I really like about Peckinpah, and where I think Peckinpah overlaps with at least in like No Country for Old Men, is like the looks that these like characters give. Like they're not like book smart, but they're almost like intuitively smart, like some of the stuff
Yeah.
William Holden does. And I thought, I don't know if Damon really sold that as much. Like, I would have loved to see a couple shots of like sort of him, contemplating the grand nature of it all, looking out over but from like a not very smart way, kind of looking out over
hard. So hard to do,
Yeah.
They're not articulate, and they're supposed to be 16, 17-year-old guys who apparently left high school, right? So
Yeah.
the way they, there's some stuff that they say, they talk about religion for a little while, and John Grady Cole's, I guess you can believe what you want to believe. There's some sort of metaphysical musings,
Yeah.
but their lack of ability to articulate those things, I guess, handicaps a filmmaker, whereas as a writer can get into that.
Well, I think Peckinpah. I thought, see, I'd almost would think the opposite, because I would think like Peckinpah, like he's able to just show the looks or whatever of just like, and doesn't have to like verbalize it. There's a lot of points in All the Pretty Horses when I thought like maybe this is the trouble of adapting a book to screen, but like there was a lot of stuff where they should have just cut the dialogue and just had it looks, like had it as looks and glances, and told it visually. It's like the comparison, like as in the Wild Bunch, as like they're going through like the good Mexican village, and they see like all the kids, and they're sort of walking through, like you just see the story told in looks. Or even when they go to the camp, like you see the looks on like the babies versus the people versus this, and you can tell the characters are sort of just processing all this imagery. But in All the Pretty Horses, it's like they would put a line there, like it's almost like they would put like something to help the audience. Like I thought they like over dialogued it in a way that was a bit inappropriate.
No, I love the dialogue in there. I loved it.
You liked it?
And they don't mess it up. They take it word for word, generally from the book.
Yeah, I would have cut it though. That's the do you do you generally tend to like more like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of like,
I mean,
is that
I
what
don't
you're
like
looking for?
speeches?
Sure.
We watched something. Beth and I watched something recently where, I know what it was. It was 0 Hour, the De Niro movie that's on Apple, I think now, and it's like a political intrigue. And toward the end, the characters are all making sort of speeches to wrap things up. No, I don't like that, but I think the dialogue, for me at least, I love it in the book, and I think it's good in the movie. I think it's the only way that you can characterize people in movies, or one of the only ways, right? And generally like it in the movie.
Yeah. I tried to write down some, or I was trying to see about like a line that like the before, like I think it's like the before every dumb thing, like the speech that I think Rollins gives, like before every dumb thing, there's a decision, yeah, and then it's like I can't do it. It's like it's like I should have been cut. It almost seemed like I would have cut those probably. I think of like,
wow,
yeah, I think just like I don't know. It's a good, like I think just like because I think again, like my ideal scene is like that one in the Wild Bunch of like where Holden, it's realizing that he's realizing kind of a similar thing. But it's just told with his looks, and then it's just like it's told. What is it? Is it the Hemingway iceberg theory thing? Of like you have all this stuff going on. Like it's like I love I guess the indirectness of it. On film, like and as William Holden says, like it's time to go. Like he's saying, like it's time to go. Or the scene that you brought up that I love, where Ernest Borgnine has to ride off when their friend is like getting captured by the guy, and he said, he's like, the way they tell that is like, he's like, yeah, he doesn't mean anything to us, he's a thief, Yeah, you can do what you want with him, but it's like you see that contrasted with like the look on his face and like the way they edit the scene and like hold on the shots of Ernest Borgnine as he like and as he's like he's not just immediately running away, but he's kind of like slowly backing off by saying, "Yeah, he doesn't mean anything to us, whatever." And it's just telling the story of like he's just so like he can't show it, but that's even the tragedy of it. He's so destitute over having to leave his buddy there, even like and he knows it's wrong even at that moment. And then he's just stewing on it, which is why he's the first one. He's waiting for them to come out of the house, and there's not even anything that needs to be said.
Maybe it's a difference in filmmakers writing a script for a movie and somebody trying to adapt a novel into a movie.
Yeah, is the
trying...
yeah? I wonder, is that do you for like movie film at like for I guess for film writing adaptations do they typically get some of the like are you just happy to see the line like some of the lines that you want to like hear said like or is that that's part of the enjoyment?
I think that the dialogue in the book really is one of the things that's really well done in the book. So yeah, I was glad to see it in the movie.
Yeah, another argument for a 3-hour film, I think.
That's right.
Yeah,
2 hours and 42 minutes is director's cut.
Does that affect your like? Is that what are you when you're looking for an adaptation in terms of your enjoyment? So one thing I've been thinking about is the different ways people enjoy movies or how they bring their personal rating system. I'm about to make a video on this for my channel, but I've been talking a lot about CGI versus practical effects, and kind of realizing that like for me, just seeing practical effects by themselves it's valuable to me enough that like that is part of how I guess judge or like part of my enjoyment of the movie and part of how I like process thinking about it of just seeing that expressed as an art, like seeing it's the only chance like in terms of Americans connection. We talk about Americans reading fewer books and but even like we see certainly fewer theater shows. The only place I as an American get to see set design is in movies. And so like irrespective of anything else, if I just want to see the art of set design practiced, I can go to like some local shows, but I'm in East Tennessee. There's not much local theater here outside of like academia. Or I could go to New York or Chicago. So I'd be curious as a someone who's made definitely more literary background, like is part of the enjoyment for you, going to the question about just seeing the words that you've read on screen, like is that something you like? I guess like even if the movie's not as good, like it sounds like to me that there's some appreciation for the movie because it's like just to see the adaptation at all, like just to see some of the lines on and just to see people hear it like or people say it. Is that how you think about it?
Well, like I said, I watched this movie before I read the book. Right. So the movie actually got me to read the book. So I have to say that though, even though the book's a lot better as it usually is. So I guess, I mean, I have gotten into sort of a thing of I'll read a good book and then I want to see it made into a movie, Mm-hmm. And the other books in this trilogy, I don't know why they haven't been made into the movies yet, but I'm hoping they will be. And so I'd be looking forward to that as well.
I'll see if I can get them done. If they ever give me the money to do it, they'll be.
Yeah, you and Taylor, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That'd be great. Do you has there been an adaptation that's made you mad? Like this seems like even though I'd be like, is there? I'm trying my shout out my brother, but my brother's a big Lord of the Rings fan and Hobbit, and he really hated the Hobbit, and I thought, I mean, like the new Hobbit series, and thought they were kind of silly and goofy. And I agree with him. I only saw the first one, but it seemed I have read the Hobbit, and it seemed like very.
Enjoy them. I got one. The Walter Tevis. You know Walter Tevis?
I do not.
He wrote Queen's Gambit and The Hustler.
Oh, okay. Is that the chess show?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, he wrote The Color of Money. It's a
Scorsese
movie.
Yeah.
Tom Cruise in it, and I don't know how that got made into the movie. That I like the movie, okay, but the novel that it's based on is almost
really
unrecognizable. Yeah,
I've been waiting to actually watch. I'm a huge Tom Cruise fan. I love Tom Cruise. He's like my comfort guy.
Really?
Yeah, I love him. He's like whenever I'm like if I'm feeling sad, I'll put on a Tom Cruise movie. and just for whatever reason, I just he has a lot of good ones. I watched The Hustler last year finally to be able to watch The Color of Money.
Also a Tempest novel.
Now, is that
Tempest.
so? That one I thought was I didn't realize it was a not. It made sense because it's a pretty long movie, especially for that. It's like 2 hours 20 minutes or something, and it is like kind of literary up and down. It felt like. Did you like The Hustler?
Yeah, oh yeah.
But
Great movie.
not the Color of Money, or you like the movie, but they're
it.
just different.
I saw it first, and I liked it. I thought it was a fun movie. But once I read the novel, I just thought, wow, this is totally different from the movie, and I mean, in ways that I couldn't have conceived of. So
Yeah,
I just there was kind of betrayal, I guess, of
gotcha.
their source material.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I guess so. The last thing we typically do is so recommendations off of these movies. I'm trying to think if if you liked All the Pretty Horses, you might like this, and if you liked The Wild Bunch, you might like that. So I'll give you some time because I probably should send these questions over earlier. So apologies.
That's okay.
Good lesson. But I think for The Wild Bunch, I would say if you like The Wild Bunch out there, anything else by Sam Peckinpah would be great. I would actually, if you like there's a movie called The Badlanders with Ernest Borgnine and Alan Ladd. It's a lesser known Delmer Daves movie that has a similar sort of thing of two guys fighting against the Western system. Delmer Daves was one of the first revisionist Western directors as well. And The Badlanders really needs to please someone out there if you can remaster it, please remaster it. But it's based on the same book as the Asphalt Jungle, the great film noir with Sterling Hayden, but they're totally different movies. It's really good. And then I would also recommend Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia, which has the general from this movie as the bad guy. Has a pretty similar ending to Wild Bunch, but it's all about like it's kind of like more of a lonely solo movie about just having to live under capitalism and like having to scramble and scrape by and how that affects you. And it's all about like some guy trying to return in a reward. I guess it's kind of honestly, who's the you said it was Robert Ryan. I can't remember the actor's name who's chasing him the whole time in the Wild Bunch. Is that Robert Ryan?
Robert Ryan, yeah.
Yeah, Robert Ryan. It's basically it's like what if it's sort of a story told from Robert Ryan's perspective in this movie. So it's very similar movie, but if Robert Ryan was, and I think it's in the 70s, but it's kind of like if he was sort of trying to the bounty hunter side, which you sort of get more of, kind of chasing a guy down. So that would be for The Wild Bunch. And All the Pretty Horses, we'll say No Country for Old Men. If you like.
That's what I was going to say. You stole my. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. You go ahead.
I would only say that because I mean, I think they're very different movies, but I think that the source material and the author they're both taken from Cormac McCarthy novels, and the setting, Texas, of course, modern day Texas, contemporary Texas, I guess, No Country for Old Men, and much different plot, but a lot of the similarities in tone, I think, between those two movies.
Yeah.
I can't think of another Western like offhand, like all the Pretty Horses.
I'd say Cowboy, the one I was talking about, the one with Glenn Ford. That's also a Delmer Daves movie with Glenn Ford and Jack Lemmon. Plot wise, it's very similar, but it's more very a lot of beef and cattle euphemisms in that movie, and like in themes, and like comparing that to male relationships. So Cowboy for sure. And then honestly, if you like the melodrama, like if you're like me and like, man, this could have been a melodrama, then obviously Giant is probably. I'm trying to think of other Western melodramas. I know Anthony Mann's done some, but I don't think I've seen a lot of his movies.
I'd go the other way, maybe talk about The Unforgiven.
Unforgiven, yeah, yeah. Unforgiven. I mean,
Clint Eastwood and Gene Hackman.
Unforgiven is one of my favorite Westerns. Yeah, revisionist Western. I mean, if you want to sort of in this vein, in this sandbox, yeah, you could go. Peckinpah was one of the known ones. John Ford, he both sort of helped invent the Western and then also did the revision Western. I think he won the Best Director Oscar four times, I think, more than anyone else. So The Searchers and The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance is a fantastic one. That's also, all of his movies that I've seen so far by him are concerned very heavily with violence. So if you like the sort of more violent aspects of these two movies, The Searchers is a great retrospective on how violence like shaped the West, and it's like the genesis of all action movies. And then The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance is like the role of, actually, because Kim was my journalism professor. Man Who Shot Liberty Valance is great about violence and journalism and myth making and storytelling. Have you seen that one with Jimmy Stewart and John Wayne?
I'm familiar with it, but I haven't seen it.
I would definitely, as a working, journalist and as a journalism professor, I'd be fascinated about. That would be another great episode to do, because it's The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance is all about sort of figuring out and how the myth of the man who shot Liberty Valance and how like that was used historically. So it's honestly a journalism movie as much as it is a Western.
Oh, cool.
And it's really good. So John Ford, Delmer Daves, and No Country for Old Men, as Kim said. What about, you got any recommend for like The Wild Bunch? Or is it just same revisionist kind of same sandbox?
Butch Cassidy. Sundance Kid.
Maybe that'll be. Maybe if you want to come back and do this, we could do Butch Cassidy and The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. Sure. That would be a lot of fun.
We could do that.
I'll give Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, if you like cinematography. I mean, John Ford is probably the best to ever do it, like visually, I think. And that it's crazy, but that might be his best looking movie, along with he's got like 3 or 4 others. But well, cool. Well, Kim, this has been a lot of fun. I appreciate this. This flew by. I've still got like 8 pages of notes, and I'll try and post some other stuff with it. But yeah, thanks so much for coming on.
Enjoyed it.
Any final thoughts to the audience or anything, or last things you?
Glad I watched The Wild Bunch.
Yeah.
I think I'd seen part of it before, but classic and fun movie.
Yeah.
High body count.
very, very, very high body count. Yeah, right in the hundreds probably. Probably the biggest body count that I've seen, along with Hard Boiled by John Woo. It just goes, he's the guy that Tom Cruise connected to Mission Impossible 2, which is, and I think, all that stuff. So, love John Woo. Cool. Well, thanks, Kim.
It's fun. We'll do it again.
Absolutely.